Hi, my name is Darren Aronofsky. It's May 10th, 2007. I'm sitting in my living room in New York City. My friend Nico Tavanisi, who did the documentary of the making of The Fountain that's on the DVD, came up with this idea that for some reason, we'll try to be nice throughout this whole thing. The studio didn't want to go and do a voice commentary track, but we decided to put one out there and let people check it out, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. I promise not to talk too much about what the film's about and clear up any of the questions people have. I just talked more about some of the experience of making this film. As many of you may know, the movie took us about 6-7 years to make. It was a really long trip, and generally that happens to me all the time. You know, every time we sort of start a project, it's a difficult road. When we wanted to make a black and white movie about God and math, it was pretty tough to get people to give money to unproved filmmakers make something very experimental and strange. And then after Pi got a release and people were very interested in what we were going to do next, we sent them the book to Requiem for a Dream, and no one wanted to get involved with that. So the same thing sort of happened with The Fountain. It was a very long path, but it's been my main focus for the last 6 years, this film, and it's everything I wanted to do. I think the film always started off with this idea of taking sci-fi to a new and different place. I felt that science fiction had really been hijacked by techno-lust and movies that were really interested in gadgets and I kind of feel like audiences we've all seen that and all done that, and I was more interested in kind of psychedelic sci-fi and inner space science fiction, kind of the science fiction we played around with in Pi. So one of the first things we thought about doing was combining history and the future. We like the idea of contrasting something really long ago with something really, really deep in the future. And so I started to think about historically which time periods really interested me, and I always knew I wanted to do something with a warrior. And for a long time, since I was a teenager, I had really been into Mayan civilization and Mayan archaeology. When I was in college, me and a couple of friends drove a beat-up 1972 piece of shit car down to Belize, and on the way we got lost in a lot of the Mayan architecture. And since then, I've kind of had this big fascination with that world because it was a great civilization on the scale of something we live in today, yet it was completely disappeared. There was one moment when we were driving down a road across the southern Yucatan. There's this one road that basically crosses from west to east. And it's actually a modern-day road that's built on top of an ancient Mayan trading road. And on the side of the road are all these little tiny Mayan towns that have been abandoned for centuries, and really get very few visitors because they're pretty off the beaten track of tourists. But since we were driving down the road on the way to Belize, we stopped at a lot of them. And one night or one late day, we were at one of these places, and we were the first people to be there in over a year. And sun was setting, and it was a small Mayan trading post. 4 buildings with a plaza in the middle. And back in the day, that plaza would have been filled with hundreds and thousands of people trading all different types of goods. But now, years later, it was empty. But what I noticed is right in the center of this plaza were all these ants, a whole civilization of anthills and ants, with long trails going off into the jungle surrounding and bringing back leaves and all different types of food and supplies. What was interesting to me, I kind of had one of those moments where, there's something so micro, representing something so macro, which was, this now a great civilization of ants had taken over, where a great civilization of humans had once lived and existed. But so it kind of stayed with me that there was all these different connections, and so when I started to think about what to do, what civilization to use, I started to look at the Mayans and all their cosmology stuff, because they were just fascinated by cosmologies. Their real power, the power of the priesthood and the royalty, was based on their knowledge of the stars, because they were able to predict celestial movements, and that type of knowledge allowed them the power over other people. So all the Mayan mythology in the film, not the Mayan necessarily mythology, but their cosmology, is really based on truth. They always looked at those 3 stars of the Orion, what we call the Orion Nebula, and we actually see the 3 stars that are the belt of Orion when we look up. They actually saw the triangle, and in their homes, their hearthstones were in the formation of a triangle with the fire in the center of them, and that fire was Xibalba, which is the same thing as the Orion Nebula, which is where Tom is traveling to in this future sequence. That shot is one of the shots I'm most proud of. It was one of the first shots we conceived of when we worked on the film. That flip back and that pull out. And so I probably was working on it for 4 or 5 years before we finally got it right. That was another sort of, when we started to think about sci-fi, we really made a rule very early on that we didn't want to do trucks in space. If you think about it, kind of every sci-fi film has this, same idea of these souped-up trucks kind of floating around in space. There's been few films, maybe Buckaroo Banzai being one of them, where you have an organic element in the film. So we started to try and figure out how could we do something really different with space. And so one of the things was to try and reinvent the spaceship. And as many people know, there's no friction in space, so there's really no need for constant propulsion like you see at the back of most rocket ships. That's from the idea that we have to escape Earth's gravity. But once you're in space and you have a certain amount of speed, you don't really, need propulsion. You can just sort of be going. So we started to, think about a ship that wasn't made out of steel and that didn't have engines. And that slowly came, slowly but surely we started to come up with an idea of, well, what could this ship be made out of? And, really the thing that's going on in space while you're traveling through it is the view. And that opened up the idea of doing a bubble ship, as we called it. We wanted to sort of erase all sort of evidence of technology because, we didn't want to make a technology-based film. We wanted to make a film about the organic and about, where things may return to, which is about connecting with the planet in a way that we've forgotten.
Please, Izzy.
Casting was a long and hard process, and because I'm always looking for people that connect with the material. If you're going to do something that's very different, you need that support basis. So I had met Hugh Jackman many years ago at a bar in Lower Manhattan. I think after the X-Men 2 premiere or something. Somehow I ended up being introduced to him, and we kind of remembered. The next time I saw him, it was actually it was probably after the X-Men premiere, because the next time I met him, I was in a gym at a hotel doing some work in Los Angeles, and I was trying to get in shape, and I was struggling with my my measly dumbbells, and suddenly someone across the gym is yanking a machine all out of its bolts, and shaking the entire room. And I look over, and it was Hugh. So I said hello, and he was very nice and friendly, and that was the second time I saw him. And then many years later, I went to see. I was in New York, and I was only in New York for 2-3 days, and I had to go see 3 Broadway shows. And the first night was the show, and it wasn't very good. And then the second night, I went to a second show. It wasn't very good, and I was really burnt out and exhausted. And the third night, I had tickets to see Hugh Jackman and The Boy from Oz, and I was like, really wasn't too excited about going. But eventually, I dragged myself out, and I went, and he just blew me away. I just found myself on my feet clapping away, and backstage he was really friendly, and I decided to see what he would think about this thing we were trying to do. And he read it that night and called me the next day and said he really wanted to do it. And we started to talk about it, and it was clear that he was thinking about a lot of the same ideas that I was trying to write about in the script of The Fountain. Then we started casting for Izzy. Hugh suggested Rachel, and it turned out to be a really great idea. They just had a tremendous amount of chemistry and connection. Everything in the background of the film, including of all these space sequences, including those stars behind them, is nothing was generated by computers. Those stars were photographed, not actual stars, but they were photographed. And a lot of what you'll see in the backgrounds of the film were, organic elements, and that was just always. I just wanted to get away from CGI, because I kind of felt that CGI was just, people had seen it so much. Once again, I wanted to try and do something that looked very different and was unique.
What are you doing here?
Take a walk with me.
Too much work?
It's the first snow.
Yeah, I know, but they're waiting on me.
Come on, Tommy.
So at a certain point, we decided to not only make it a mixture of 2 time periods. We realized that those 2 time periods were actually going to be the edge. They're kind of like 2 weights that, if you ever see one of those little things that you balance on your finger on a point, and it has 2 weights on the end, you buy in gift shops all across America. Well, the future and the past, we realized, were these balancing weights, and that something was going to have to be the heart of the film. And that became the present, which was definitely not in the first conception when we first started thinking about the film. I remember when we first had the film, it was more of we just didn't know how it all held together. You probably recognize Ethan Suplee, who plays Manny in the film, and he was definitely not what I imagined when I wrote the part. But he came in, and he's just such an amazing actor that I decided to rethink how I thought about it. Now I guess he's had very good success. this was always a conscious decision to sort of have the audience not know, that Donovan was a monkey. You can see Donovan in a few of the shots from above and stuff, but I think most people miss it until we reveal it a bit later. Sean Patrick Thomas was another actor that he actually came in and read for me for Requiem for a Dream. I was always really impressed with his acting, and I just told him that one day I wanted to work with him, and so he was always in my mind for the lab sequences when we were casting The Fountain. Donna Murphy too is just a tremendous actress and Broadway star, and it was just a pleasure to work with her as well. This was this kind of moment of inspiration is something that I've tried to capture in a lot of my work in films, and there's this sort of imagery, which I really don't want to talk about the symbolism of a lot of the imagery. I think it's there for people to discover and stuff. But I mean, you could look at these sequences and even this shot, and it feels extremely celestial in a lot of ways. And that was a conscious effort to try and make all three time periods connected. For us, Tom's trip through the future sort of helped to with the design of the rest of the movie.
Donovan's on the table. If we do nothing, he dies. Tell you how long?
2 hours. Keep him under.
Once again, we were trying to connect, looking through telescopes, looking through microscopes, looking at celestial bodies, and ultimately, Tom's journey to Xibalba, which many of you might know what Xibalba kind of represents. And I mean, Izzy talks about it on the rooftop pretty clearly. That was not a real monkey. But the effects were done by this amazing guy, Adrian, up in Montreal. It just always surprised us. He was a young guy about our age, and he just always really every day brought something new to set that was really exciting. Maestro FX. There was no way that after Requiem for a Dream that I could do a movie without Ellen Burstyn. We had such a great time together, and I definitely, it wasn't really. It's really a two-hander. The Fountain. It's Hugh and Rachel's movie, but I had to work with Ellen, so I created this character, Lillian Gazzetti. Lillian for my grandmother, and Gazzetti for my first film teacher. There was a real discussion about color and light. About 2 years before we ever got to set, me, Maddie Liberty, my DP, and James Chinlin, my production designer, sat around and talked about light and what it would represent. And Hugh very much is we thought of as a vampire. There is a sense of his immortality, and he's very much in the shadow, very much in the dark. While Izzy is very much in the light. And for us, the entire film was a journey from darkness to light. In fact, you can, the opening battle scene and its darkness to the end of the film, which is almost complete white, was a conscious journey. Once again, here we are moving through a celestial star field in a certain way.
Fun, very fun. What are you doing?
I'm stargazing. We found it in the attic.
It's freezing.
I want you to see something. Come on. You're an old fart. Go on, look.
Goldstone?
It's actually a nebula marker out of a dying star. That's what
I'm still here.
What? I took side.
When?
There you go. You can see how old I am. I guess people don't call it junior high anymore. I think it's called middle school. Although I did see in a movie recently someone else say junior high school. I'm not sure exactly. This is one of my favorite shots, sneaking between the telescope and Hugh. I mean, she, you know, the acting styles between the two of them was very interesting. Hugh is an exceptional actor and incredibly skillful technically, probably from all the work he's done, you know, in action films and stuff. And he was just so willing to try things in every different way. We would run take after take, and we would try every single emotion that could possibly work, and throw out ideas to each other. And we would just do take after take, and it wasn't like you know, he wasn't getting it. It was more like, hey, would this work better if we tried this? Hey, would we work better if we did this? And he really was an incredible sport about it. I mean, you know, there are actors that give you 2-3 takes and then they don't want to give you any more, and I don't really understand that philosophy, because, you know, you wait all day for them to light, and then you wait all day for every, you know, hair and makeup and everything else to work out, and then finally you're on set, and you know, that's the fun of it. That's what, you know, actors and directors should be doing, is trying stuff out. So, you know, I'm always up for another take. Now everything you see in that screen is organic. It was photographed through a microscope, and they're all different types of chemical reactions. Called that the King of the World shot, named it after that Titanic shot with Leo at the end of the bow of the ship. And that was an improvised shot. We were on set, and Hugh was just playing around, and he was sitting there and at the front of the ship, and I just saw it, and we rolled camera and we went for it. This, you know, you could see Izzy's hair is just growing back. You know, she just, her backstory was that, you know, she's been fighting her cancer, and her hair is finally coming back from a bout with through chemo, and but her illness has come back, and that's sort of what's beneath the surface. Rachel spent 2 days in that bathtub doing this, and once again, she was very much like Hugh, in that she was so open to trying things in so many different ways. And we would do take after take after take for this tiny scene, because we just kept exploring it and trying it in different ways. And there was so much great stuff to choose from in the editing room of ideas. And I mean, really, the film could be cut together in many, many different ways because of the different feelings and emotions and life that the actors brought to each scene. this story of not feeling hot and cold is actually based on some true stuff that some true stories we heard from some of the people who we met who had loved ones that had died young.
Honey?
When I'm here, I will always be here. Listen, look,
I love their different skin tones. That was natural, but it really worked for the film, where Rachel's more towards the yellow and Hugh's more towards the pink, but that actually worked well for life and death. This film we got to work again with Clint Mansell and the Kronos Quartet. I've had a great collaboration with Clint on Pi and Requiem and now on The Fountain, and it was this was just such a touching score. And when it started to come to form, we didn't know going into it that we were going to go back to the Kronos, but as soon as String showed up, we realized that we were going to have to work with those guys, and it's just such an amazing collaboration between Clint and the Kronos. But there was also an element of it that we always knew there was some type of psychedelic rock element that we wanted for it. So we thought about a lot of different possibilities of who could do it, and eventually we sort of settled on this band from Scotland called Mogwai, and they just sort of they're known for doing 10, 15, 20-minute long jams, and we showed them the film, and it was quite a crazy recording schedule because Clint scored the entire thing in New York, and then over Christmas and New Year's, I guess of 2005 or something, he had to travel to Scotland to record Mogwai. Then we went to San Francisco to get the Kronos, and then we had to come back to New York to put it all together. That spinning shot that you just saw of the car racing by, is connected to the two other traveling shots of Tomas and Tom in the film. There's the sequence of him shooting through his space bubble that's at the beginning of the film that we already saw, and coming up we'll see the one of him traveling on horseback. And the reason it's like that, it's such a strange pass, was because I wanted to make connections between the different time periods, and the movement from normally would have been done, and much cheaper would have been done, just sort of tracking from left to right. Camera would have been on the ground, and an operator would have been there and just pan from left to right as the car zapped by. But when I realized that we were dealing with a spaceship in space, I realized that there is no left to right, there is no up and down, but it freed me up to put the camera somewhere different. And so doing that in space, and then doing that in the present, and then in the past, sort of made a lot of sense to me.
Revelation. You gotta pursue it. You gotta do it. You monitor the monkeys and that the main focus of the brain to that age. Stop. I want the next subject prepped. I'm ready for surgery.
All the science stuff is, that lucite box that the monkey's in. All that stuff is based in truth. Ari Handel, who's a PhD, so I guess he's Dr. Handel, and he was a roommate of mine in college. And after college, he went and off and got a PhD at NYU in neuroscience while I was struggling to try and make pie. And as he got his PhD, he realized he was sort of done with academia and he wanted to try something different. And so I started talking to him about this, the fountain. Little did he know he'd spend as much time on the fountain as he did on getting his PhD. But we based a lot of that science stuff on his real work. And, so that was all kind of true.
Is everything all right?
Yes. Everything's all right.
I love the painter. Maddie's work in this was just great. And so Tommy discovers the book on his desk, waiting for him, and it starts, and it'll bring him back, probably to my one of my favorite shots in the film. Stephen McHattie was a interesting find. We went up to Canada to shoot, and we didn't know who would we find to be in the film, and but Stephen McHattie came in, and it was just so clear that we had found our Grand Inquisitor. He's a tremendous actor. Someone I can't remember who, was just talking about Stephen McHattie as being this great actor, and whatever happened to him. And I said, well, actually, I just worked with him. So he has a lot of respect in the world. He really, those are all real open wounds. He's that type of actor. Boyd Banks just has a great, unique face, and I really love that set. We basically had such a small budget that we really were really limited with how much we could shoot. I think we had one day to shoot all the Inquisitor stuff, and it was a really tough day. That's really his blood too. He was very happy about that little move right there, where he got that little corner of Spain. To Starfield. So, once again, symbolically connected to, the whole movement of the film. Cliff Curtis, who shows up here, is an actor I met. Well, I actually at one point went to New Zealand to try and cast an actor, and didn't work out. But while I was up there, I had met Cliff Curtis once at some point in Los Angeles, and he lived in a small town in New Zealand, and I just called him up, and he invited me to stay at his house, and he took me to his tribal lands, and and we had a great time together and just became good friends. And so once again, I wrote this role for him.
Just look at it. There's no other choice.
Here's that overhead shot I was talking about. This was the first night of shooting. It's actually a Friday night. We kind of cheated by adding a night, and this was a great location. It really, could pass for, 16th century. And I kind of learned a lot about how great Hugh was going to be. I mean, his whole movement across there. I mean, we had been rehearsing it with a stunt double. Just didn't work. See that twitching right underneath his right eye? It's funny. Yeah, you can see it right there. A lot of people over the course of this film thought it was a technical problem, like there was something wrong with the camera. Digital effects team even tried to take it out, and it's actually one of the reasons I cast Stephen McHattie. I noticed it. He just has this, I don't know if it's voluntary or involuntary tremor. The Inquisition was pretty hardcore, and hanging prisoners by their feet was actually, pretty mild. Most of the time they hung people from their wrists and lifted them up from their wrists so that their shoulder blades were dislocated. And we tried to do that, but there was just no way to really pull it off safely. Once again, all the Inquisitor stuff was shot in a single day. It's all we had. But Hugh's movement in that first day, the way he changed his pace, like first he went fast, and he went slow, and then he went fast, and just as compared to the stunt double, it was the last time we ever used a stunt double to line up a shot. We just always knew Hugh was going to do it completely different and uniquely and much better. It's just such a creativity and originality in how he moved.
Why are you here? Come quickly. No. Leave. Protect the Queen. She sent me. She demands your return. Not before he dies. No, Tomas. Leave him. She desires a private audience.
Fear not. She will not be in hell alone. I will make sure her servants are waiting.
A lot of the crew was encouraged to shave their head and join the monks because we couldn't afford enough monks. And it was hard, 'cause it was a hard job because, I'm serious about that, even though they just sat there. The monks, they couldn't watch the stunt, which is pretty hard because, these people are falling in front of you, and all you want to do is look up. But, I kind of threatened them with Lot's wife and Sodom and Gomorrah. If they looked up, they would turn to salt. This was, one of my favorite sets, of course. Cordoba, it was based on. My dream has always been to retire in Spain. I'm a big Spainophile, and I've spent a lot of time there. And was in Cordoba a few years ago, and I just love the idea of the infinite that mosque at Cordoba did. And the fact that I think it was the Emperor Charles V put this Catholic, staging area in the center of it. It's just an incredible building, an incredible mixture of architectural styles. But take close notice of Queen Isabel's dress. This is not the same Isabel as Isabel and Ferdinand. It's very much a fairy tale, this film. I've always wanted people to sort of see it as a fairy tale, but a fairy tale for adults. A psychedelic fairy tale is what I like to call it, and what someone in the press once called it, which I was really happy with. But take a close look at her dress. Get a sense of what this whole scene is about. Mark Margolis is, an old veteran. He saved Pi with his great talent, and I've always felt like I owed him. So because Requiem for a Dream, he did a very tiny role, but and when I started writing this, and I came up with the character of Father Avila, it was very much staged for Mark. You know, I'm not sure about that robe on him though. It really isn't flattering on his pot belly. And but he's a beautiful guy, even though he loves to drive me crazy at times. There's very much a idea about shapes in the film, and how shapes evolved across time. For us, you know, the past was very much represented by a triangle, which you see as a symbol on that dagger, which connects to Xibalba, which connects to the pyramids, which connects to the rooftops in Seville, or whatever Spanish city we were doing. So the triangle for us became a major shape throughout the time period of Spain and the Mayan Empire. And then in the present, you know, we thought about what the shape was, and you know, it's very clear we live in a world of squares, from, you know, TV sets to couches to billboards to computer screens. Everything around us is squares, in fact. It is, you know, in many ways the most prominent shape. I mean, even the rooms, our windows, everything is rectangular and square. And so a triangle from 3 sides to a square, 4 sides. And then as we shot into the future, it became very clear that the shape of the future was the circle. You know, once again, another way that we got the idea of the bubble ship. You know, you had celestial bodies, stars, planets, and the ship, all circles, all curves, no squares, no triangles. This scene was one of the early scenes, you know, I ever wrote for the film. It evolved in many, many, many different ways, but revealing the great secret of the Tree of Life, protected by the Mayans, was one of our early ideas. Once again, those candle lights, to me, you know, this whole set was an enchanted forest, and the queen being the tree, and the trees being this infinite forest around her, and the little lights could be fireflies. But the idea was that when you threw them out of focus, there was no difference between them and the stars behind Tom in the future. There was another inspiration moment. All of our characters in all 3 time periods, once again, had an inspiration moment. It's funny because, you know, a lot of people have talked about how the film all works together. And we definitely have a perception of how all 3 time periods, and in fact, I think it's pretty clear. But I don't know if I really want to talk about it because, I think part of the enjoyment of the film is the discussion of how everything is connected. But it really does all add up to one way. And a lot of people have figured it out. It's really not that complicated. And I think it's more of the fun of the piece of who's actually exists and who doesn't exist, and who's a memory and who's a story, and what's a metaphor and what's not a metaphor. I'll tell you, there's as far as characters, there's very, very few metaphors in this film. So that's a hint for you. That's a kind of repeating shot we had a lot, was looking down on the characters. And if you look at the way the film is shot, it's very much shot as a 3-dimensional crucifix. I think it's called a cruciform. North, south, west, east, and up and down. And the reason we chose that kind of way of shooting the film was, for lots of reasons. But it was about trying to create structure into a 3-dimensional space, of outer space. And shooting left, right, forward and back made a lot of sense, but the up and down was sort of given to us by doing all of our homework in space.
Is he?
This was sort of a repeating shot as well as Tommy walking up steps. We have Tom walking up steps through the film. And this was kind of a reenactment of the top of the pyramid. That's how we saw this. You know, the truth revealed. And, you know, this very much adds to the mythology of the film. It's funny, that symbol in the codex, which is a image that's redrawn in many different ways through lots of different Mayan art from all over Latin America. You know, it really is you know, it's funny because that symbol was in my head a lot, and I didn't realize how similar it was to this kind of closing image of Tom dying deep in the future when Xibalba explodes and his body is ripped apart and particles rain down in the tree and the tree comes back to life. That was, you know, right there in all that ancient art. It's funny, until I saw the poster of the fountain, the American poster for the release, I didn't make that connection about how close those symbols were. It was all kind of subconscious. It seems obvious now, but
Is.
looking down on a ship floating through space, you could actually see Tom walking around in there if you look closely. This was kind of a tough scene because that role of Dr. Alan Lipper was originally we cast the neurosurgeon, a great neurosurgeon, very, very famous to play that role. He had helped us tremendously. He talked a lot to Rachel and to Hugh and to myself, gave us a lot of time, showed us his work. And so Rachel had the idea of, hey, why don't we cast him for to be in the film? And so I liked the idea, and we cast him. But I'll tell you, don't cast an, I don't think you cast a real neurosurgeon to play a neurosurgeon. He got there the day of, and he was just very, very nervous, and he just couldn't do it. I mean, in real life, he was an incredible person with tremendous gravitas. But as soon as, he started to do some lines, he really just froze up. And his wife tried to help him and coach him through it, but it just made it worse. And so at the last minute, I reached out to an actor that had impressed me, in a script reading we did, and we brought him in, and we were kind of saved. But if you look, his medical jacket is a little bit too big for him, and that's because the actual neurosurgeon was a much bigger guy. That was a shot we just found, which happens. This shot is an homage to a great Akira Kurosawa shot in Ikiru. It's pretty much stolen verbatim. We changed it a little bit because it was Montreal and because of the location we were able to find, but there's a shot at the beginning of a reel in Ikiru that's very, very similar to this. And both films thematically sort of, use it in a similar way. A character deep in their head who's kind of, pulled out of it by reality. My dad is right over Ellen's left shoulder. He's been in all 3 films, and he's becoming a better and better actor every chance he gets. There he is, the gray-haired guy to the left. This was another shot we just sort of played with and found on set. Another monkey operation. I remember Hugh's performance in this and being really impressed with his intensity.
When we're done here, I want you to prep Kane.
I'll get her. She'll take care of it.
I remember when we started doing this scene, and the camera was the first shot was the camera all the way up in the corner there, and we started shooting, and Hugh's intensity was just so tremendous, and I didn't want to lose it, so I pulled the camera down and rushed it to this close-up because I really wanted to capture what he was doing. Sometimes you gotta just do that because the actors just can't wait and hold it for a close-up. It just starts coming out in a wide shot, and if you're gonna want it, then you got to get down there and get it.
She's alone. She needs to rest.
No one invents new drugs
My dad.
overnight. No one. You're not
Finding the
being
light
rational.
perfectly.
You can't fix everything.
Don't tell me what I can and can't do.
Your wife needs you. Why are you?
Why the fuck do you think I'm here?
I love James' set here. Putting the putting the lab into a basement. You could see through the windows, people walking by up above. This was just something that happened on set. James' set. I saw that pattern there, and I just liked it. And liked the way it worked. It wasn't a planned shot. And it was a set, which is usually when you're on a set, it's not that beautiful that you actually find something you want to focus on and give a close-up. This, we had a whole improvised scene between the two of them that was just great, but because the film plays out from pretty much Tommy's point of view, we didn't want to break that language and then go in and have a whole scene, even though emotionally it probably would have been pretty effective to have Ellen Burstyn and Rachel Weisz acting face to face. But there was some great stuff that the two of them did.
I'm sorry about it.
She's amazing.
So now we get into the Moses Morales scene, which for me was the emotional. It is kind of the big emotional scene of the film. I associate very much with the scene in Requiem for a Dream with Harry and Sarah. He realizes his mom's on drugs, if you remember that one. But this very much was a scene like that, and blown, just so impressed with Rachel's performance here. If if you watch her big speech on Moses Morales is a single take. It's funny, when we were cutting her, we did so many different takes of it. We tried cutting together different pieces, and we had kind of this Frankenstein at the end. I mean, it worked. It was very emotional, and I was happy with it. But then I said, you know what? We should just look through her shots again and see the different takes she did. And sure enough, there was that one take, which was just overall having this one take without cuts was just far outweighed keeping it apart. Moses Morales is an actual person. It's funny, the woman who did video assist on The Fountain actually knew him. He's a kind of a spiritual guy, a shaman of sorts who lives down in Palenque in Mexico and gives tours of the ruins. And we met with him when we did a research trip early on in the making of The Fountain. Ari, myself, Eric Watson, the producer, and our location manager, Dow Griffiths, went down. And this is part of the perks of making a film with the studio. We went down to Guatemala, Honduras, and southern Mexico, and went around to all these incredible Mayan ruins, from Yaxchilan to Palenque to Copan, basically all the great Mayan, great Mayan cities. We missed quite a few of them, but we saw a big chunk. And just as from place to place, we just hooked up with all these different scholars and leading thinkers. And when we got to Palenque, we met Moses Morales, and he told me this story about his father. One take, Rachel Weisz.
He'd be gone. They'd planted a seed over his grave. The seed became a tree. Moses said his father became part of that tree. He grew into the wood, into the bloom. And when a sparrow ate the tree's fruit, his father flew with the birds. He said death was his father's road to awe. That's what he called it. The road to awe. Now, I've been trying to write the last chapter, and I haven't been able to get that out of my head.
Now that's acting, ladies and gentlemen. You have to have the training of working on the stage for years to, a lot of actors today that can't maintain emotion like that and have it build and change and become something different. We're very lucky to capture that. Now, if you remember that view you just saw was kind of very similar to what you just saw with Tomas and Queen Isabel in the court.
I promise. Will you stay with me tonight?
Yeah, I'll stay. I'll stay. There was something about traveling up that felt different than what you normally see in sci-fi films. If you look really closely, that is actually the tree ship spinning in the distance. That was a model, and everything you see in this frame, is real and existed. We built that on a soundstage in Montreal. That tree existed. And that shot was done without visual effects. The hairs were actually just accomplished with simple static electricity.
Don't worry. We're almost there. Through that last dark cloud is a dying star. And soon enough,
you'll notice this framing, that profile shot, is similar to shots you'll later see when Tomas is up on top of the pyramid in front of the Tree of Life. No difference with Tom here at the Tree of Life.
Don't worry. We're almost there.
That's the sound of trucks backing up. I don't know where that came from. That was just so important to me, that the sound of the trucks backing up, kind of that 4 a.m. Beginning of dawn, morning sound of a city just waking up. And this takes us back into the book, into the past. And this takes us once again back in time. The way the film is constructed, there were many ways to put the film together. And we tried many different ways. We ended up with the film pretty much exactly how we wrote it. I think one day perhaps I'll do a different version of the film. It'd be interesting to even have fans out there mash it up and try different ways to combine it, because the story does fit together in many different ways. The version you have now was in many ways, what we always preconceived of it being. Once again, the triangle in the past, and part of shooting this in the rain, the most fun was having Mark Margolis suffer from the uncomfortableness of being wet all day. This looks like a kind of a fake pyramid, even though it was real. I never liked that shot, but it was the best we could do at the time. And this tent was, we brought a lot of mud in. We built all these sets, including the Great Pyramid, inside of a giant long factory that used to build trains in Montreal. We basically built a jungle in there and brought it in tons of mud. After that many workers and that many actors and many people walking around and all that water, it was really a mess. And so we all got really dirty. I remember the first day was when we lined up all the conquistadors and stuff, the one thing that was missing was mud, and so we just mixed up a bunch of dirt and water and lathered it on. And that was sort of the missing. I mean, it's funny. You read Bernal Diaz's The Conquest of New Spain, which is kind of a foot soldier's description of Cortez's conquering of the Aztecs, which was a big sort of research volume for us. And every time that the conquistadors met new Native Americans, I'm getting lost in the action adventure here. Hold on one second. So anyway, so Bernal Diaz's book always talks about when the Indians met the conquistadors. They always brought these people with them that had all these sweet-smelling incense, and they, Bernal Diaz interpreted as some type of ritual of cleansing. But what turned out is that these conquistadors stunk. They were in the jungle in all this armor without taking showers. The Native Americans who were all hanging out, living at home, were all, clean and soaked up, and there was these incredibly smelly, hairy creatures that showed up, and for their dignitaries, they wanted to keep the air fresh so that they could actually talk to them. Once again, Mark Margolis, Suffering in the Mud. Always a pleasure, Mark. Always a pleasure. Here we go again. And this is a reprise of the beginning of the film, and connects hopefully for the audience where we were and how it all comes together.
She'll wear it when you find Eden. And when you return, I shall be your Eve.
That's a little clue, that shot right there, of how it all works. And it's funny, you don't normally see in these revival where they actually bang the chest, and that's when someone's not flatlining, but their heart is irregular, you kind of whack it to try and bring it back into form. That's all Rachel dealing with chest compressions, which I'll tell you, it's a really hard thing to pull off, because it's just very dangerous. Often when people get revived, they get ribs broken and stuff, and so we had to be really careful. This character, to me, a very personal kind of beat, and I'll leave it to your imagination what it's about.
I know. I've never seen anything like it. Antonio didn't reach you?
What?
It's Donovan. The growth is shrinking. It's like the disease is cured.
I tried to do a Steadicam shot here, following him running to the door. It was going to be the only Steadicam shot in the film, but he was such a fast runner that we just couldn't keep up with him, even with the Steadicam, and so I was never happy with it. So I just changed the shot. Hugh's anger here was just so inspired. Lots of good spit. And I love this transition. The idea of connecting time through breath. Once again, everything behind him, Keaton, was organic. All that stuff back there was, some of it's yeast growing via time lapse, different types of paint pigments, all different types of stuff. I kind of felt that the reason the ship was cold was because the tree died, and life was sucked out of the ship, and it made sense to me that suddenly everything would be out of balance. And that's, for me, Hugh's character lives in the future in balance with that tree. It's, a biosphere and a system that kind of survived on its own. It took from Hugh, and Hugh took from it, and together there was a balance, but not perpetual, not forever. Hugh was constantly, slightly pulling away, and ultimately destroyed the system, very much like our time here on Earth, as we, slowly watch what we thought was imbalance, decay and get polluted, and now it's starting to kill us. That for me was one of the hardest scenes to cut in the film. It was very hard to figure out what level of intensity. It was funny when we shot it out in the field. It started off, it just wasn't working, and eventually, after a few takes, it just connected for Hugh. And I remember Ellen Burstyn, how impressed she was with Hugh and how he got there. But in early cuts of the film, I didn't include it because I felt it was, a very intense thing to say, that, death is a disease. And even though really that's, a big theme in the film, I didn't know how it would play. But ultimately, I just surrendered my faith into Hugh's performance, as we did here. This was one of the great moments this was when I realized how great Hugh was. We shot this early on, and watching him break down and do this take after take after take. We did it till he was dry. Basically, no tears would come out of him. He fully was dehydrated. His calves were cramping, and he was done. This we actually did, although that wasn't Hugh. I found a guy with a lot of tattoos on set and asked him if he mind taking adding a new tattoo to his collection. And so, he got a little bump and went for it. Nico, why didn't you do it? Did I offer you? Did I ask you to do it?
I don't think I was there that day.
Nico would have done it, but actually it would have messed with your tattoos on your fingers. I think this makes a lot of people uncomfortable because, it's rare you see a man cry on film, especially a man cry over love. And it's a shame that that type of sentimentality is not represented in film. So I think it turns some people off. A lot of women told me that they had never seen a man like that before. And they were kind of, didn't know how to handle it. Hugh was scared to shave his head because, I guess back in acting school they called him P-head, because I guess people felt he had a small head, but I think it's incredibly well proportioned. The tattoo work was really hard. I mean, if you notice, the tattoos actually go from more faded and more blurry to more and more sharp and intense, and that was the great work of Judy Chin and her team. That image through the microscope is actually some of is more raw Peter Parks footage. Some of that imagery we used for space, just a lot less processed. So that's really what we started with, and then the visual effects teams kind of turned that into the space vistas. I remember when we shot this, we did so many different takes of it because I wasn't really sure what tone Hugh should have at this point in the film. I had him play it as a conquistador. I had him play it as Tom of the future, and I had to play it as Tommy. That's ultimately what we used. Love this moment from Antonio. He, very sad. And this begins sort of a 12-minute piece by Clint Mansell. One piece of music that sort of takes us all the way into the climax of the film. And for the first time we reveal Xibalba, the actual star behind the nebula. And it was, a challenging thing to do. It would have been much easier doing a CGI, but if you look at those clouds, that's actually yeast growing, those clouds down at the bottom of that frame. You could see it out there, outside the ship as well. But all of Xibalba was done organically. It was all done, as I said, shot about the size of a postage stamp through a microscope. But, showing Xibalba is always a very risky thing. It's like, showing, it's the effect people been waiting for the entire film. So, you got to try and pull off something that's going to look good. And to look good, you got to hope it looks good in 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And hopefully because we shot something that's an actual chemical reaction, it won't date. Time will tell.
Will you deliver Spain from
This is the time in the movie where I recommend you pause the tape, do what you need to do, if, you know what I'm saying, and then press play and come back and watch it.
You do. You will.
It's a 96 frames per second. Love when you work at the, in-camera high speeds. It's always exciting to next day in dailies to see how reality has changed into something different. No matter how many times I've done it, when you still see slow motion film projected, it's just such a thrill. You could actually see Hugh and Rachel in this shot. We shot them on a turntable, green screen turntable, and then somehow they ended up in there, but that's the actual actors in there. And thus begins the road back. He finally understands, and the trip begins to the end. What does he understand, you ask? I don't know, you're going to have to watch the film again.
Okay.
Please do.
What are you doing here?
Take a walk with me.
I have too much work.
It's the first snow. We always.
They're waiting on me.
Come on, Tommy.
Please, Izzy.
And this time, instead of pulling out,
I am.
we pushed in.
I'll see you tonight, okay?
That's the only difference in the two scenes.
Hey, Dr. Creel. Antonio's on his way back. Donovan's open and ready. His vitals are steady. Come on, let's go.
The long tube leading to light.
Dr. Creel, where are you going?
Izzy? Izzy?
Now this is actually Hugh Jackman climbing that tree. That is not a stuntman. As I said earlier, what we realized is that Hugh Jackman was a better stuntman than the stuntman. And he completely did this. In fact, he did every stunt in this movie, including all these lotus position shots. If you look at his clothes and you see the way they drift and sort of zero G, we did that by putting him underwater. Once again, Hugh demanded that he did that, and so for 2 days, Hugh was underwater holding his breath in lotus position, doing turns and flips, and it was amazing. We ended up replacing his head so it wasn't underwater, because no matter what, when you shoot underwater, there's just a distortion, and it was pretty impossible to make it look good, so we ended up reshooting his head and replacing that performance. But his body and his clothes is Hugh's body underwater. A lot of people have talked about this, next scene and what it means, and I've enjoyed the dialogue about it, and so I won't shed any light on it, but. That's all I got to say.
Ushabu, Shali Kaku, Muyubu Ignaho Mihaot.
And so, the last obstacle out of his way, he enters. It's funny, the way Matty lit this was very different than what I expected. He went for something very realistic as far as the light quality, and it's amazing because when you're on set and you see those lights lighting it up, it looks so artificial. But I was pretty happy with the results. Once again, we start repeating some images, and if you think about where this fits in the kind of storyline of the film, you'll understand how it connects to the future. This was one of the first sequences I wrote when in the first draft. Well, I mean, in the first draft of The Fountain, this sequence is almost exactly how it ended up in the film. It just never changed. Sometimes when you write, you get one of those moments where it just makes sense and it's just very clear and it kind of writes itself. You're just sort of sitting back and watching it sort of all unfold and happen. That very much happened with this scene. The whole sensory of seeing the flowers and smelling them, and that was in the moment 5, 6, 7 years ago of him healing himself and eventually of him drinking from the tree and the results that happened. Since he was Wolverine and he had a lot of healing wounds, I didn't want to do the same thing where you actually saw on camera the healing wound. You know, we had just seen so much of it in film, and everyone would know exactly how he did it. So I just got some Alka-Seltzer, put it on the wound, and put water in his fingers, and, you know, just tried a different way. It was very low budget, but no one's complained. It felt pretty effective to me. So Shabab is starting to unleash, and drinking from the Tree of Life gives him a vision of all that is to come. But of course, the conquistador doesn't quite understand, doesn't get it. And thus begins his end, in the kind of cosmic justice way that he should end. So that's mostly done. We built a giant puppet of Hugh's body, and put all these pneumatics and of plants that, you know, when you pushed air through these bladders, shot up through the puppet, and gave the illusion of what we were doing. And there's the ring that Tommy lost. Tomas earned. Tom refines. And Chibalba really starts to unleash. Its end is near. The ship fading behind him as he heads further towards the star. And he fulfills the Queen's prophecy, and, well, the Queen's command. This is why you hire Mogwai and Kronos, was for what they gave us here. The star went through all the colors of the spectrum as it was shrunk, and that's how a supernova does explode. And that shot took us a very long time, many versions to get it. On the HD DVD, they actually show some of the path to getting to it. There's a hand double that takes that seat, and it always bothers me because the hand double just had some real bad arthritis, and his kind of bony thumb I felt was unfair for Hugh. But, you know, Hugh was too busy doing other stuff for us, so sometimes you have to make compromises. That, to me, if anything, should be the poster of the film, The Seed About to Go into the Grave. Well, very much what the film's about. This idea that, you know, when we're done, we go back to where we've come from. It's an old idea, you know. We're all born out of the Big Bang, and the same material that was unleashed by the Big Bang is the same material that forms us and will form humanity and all the world that's yet to come. I know I didn't give that much away, but I hope you enjoyed a small chat. I watched the film, and it's been it was such a journey for all of us, and over those 6-7 years, so much went through our heads about what this film is that I really, in one pass, can't really. Just all these different memories came up of different ideas and different things we talked about, and I hope some of them were enlightening, and perhaps down the line we'll meet and we could have more conversations about it. For me, it was the type of film that I think we worked really hard on, and there are many details in the film, and I feel that people that there's more to get from the film the more you sit back and just sort of let it soak in. Nico, I want to thank you for doing this. I hope people listen to it, and I hope people enjoy it. And if not, you could blame Nico. He's pretty easy to get in touch with, and feel free to give him a hard time. Now starts. What'd you say?
Thanks.
You're welcome. Now starts. He'll probably cut that part out, but we'll see. Even the credits for me, we thought long and hard about it, and from that white of the explosion of Shabalba, as it sort of dissolves away, we sort of wanted to hint at the birth of new stars, and for us, that's what the end sequence became. I'll talk to you soon. Hope you're all well. Peace.